Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel Melton Migration. You know that Melton Migration is a migration consultancy and research organization. We hold some interviews with migration related questions. So today we have a very special guest with us. He is Mr. Graham Watt. He is a former member of the Victorian Parliament. So I would like to request him to introduce himself, to tell us something about his background and his time in Parliament and his current activities.
Thanks, Kamal. As you said, I'm Graham Watt. I'm the former Member of Parliament in Burwood, which was a seat in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. The electorate it was a fairly diverse electorate when you consider the fact that we had 10% of the electorate was Chinese, and I was saying before off air that we had the largest, I believe it's the largest Jewish school in the Southern Hemisphere within the electorate, which was Mount Scopus. So while people might look at Burwood or Glen Iris and Ashburton and think it's quite homogenous, Anglo-Saxon, we had our mix of different cultures coming through the electorate. So I was a member for Burwood from 2010 to 2018. Prior to that, was born in Western Australia. So I grew up in Western Australia with 10 sisters and myself. In Western Australia, I suppose the greatest ethnic community outside of your Anglo-Saxon community was the Indigenous community. So members of my family are Indigenous, and so I've had some understanding from a Indigenous cultural perspective, from the Chinese perspective. Where I currently live here in Melton, the amount of people from South Asia has been great to engage with people from South Asia. So I've really enjoyed the mix. As I was saying off air, I love Indian food. So great that we've got so many Indian restaurants in and around Melton. So in my professional experience, I did my educational experience, did education, Bachelor of Business, Economics Finance, also done my law degree, and so I've been practicing as a lawyer. Currently I have a business interests in the NDIS, helping people with disability. So that's where I come from. Also, from sport, I love sport. I live in Melbourne, so obviously I've been a member of the Melbourne Victory since its inception, and I was also an Australian junior champion for athletics. I was a walker. I'm a member of the Australian Centurions Club. Walked 100 miles in 24 hours. There's only about 60 odd people in Australia that have ever done that. So that's my experiences.
100 miles in 24 hours.
100 miles in 24 hours.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your personal introduction. Actually, I see it's very colorful life. So let's talk about migration now. So from your experience, what were the main challenges new migrants faced when settling in Victoria?
I think that some new migrants, from my perspective and things that I've seen and people that I speak to, some of the new challenges are understanding culture and fitting in. So you'll find that if you look around Melbourne, you'll see there are some areas where there is a concentration of particular migrant communities, and some people in Melbourne can get quite upset about that. But for me, it's a matter of just people finding people that help them to settle into community. So if you think about Melton, where we are, there used to be a high percentage of Maltese. Now, there's still a lot of Maltese here, but over time, people don't necessarily look at the Maltese community and say, hey, there's a whole bunch of people who are migrants. It's just people who are part of Melton. And I think you look at the current Melton population and the increase in people coming through from South Asia. Over time, people will just see that as that's just Melton. It's not just people from South Asia. It's not just the fact that we've got a Muslim school around the corner, people will just see that as part of Melton and part of who we are as a society. So the challenges that people have is when something's new, some of the community that's here or in the place already sees some changes and wonder whether or not those changes are going to have negative effect on themselves. Over time, people get used to change. And I think that's the issue for me. Government, community needs to make sure that we bring people on the journey. So particularly if you've got people who don't speak English well, making sure that people understand that there are capacity to engage with community, the capacity to engage with others outside of your cultural group, and that language barrier is something that I think we need to make sure we overcome. And I think things like, for myself, just learning some really basic introductory phrases. So if you see somebody who's clearly Muslim, rather than just saying hello, you might want to say assalamu alaikum, knowing the fact that when somebody says assalamu alaikum to yourself, to say wa alaikum assalam. So these are the things that break down these barriers, make it easier for people to engage. If you can just learn how to break down those barriers, how to have that introduction. Yeah, that's where we're...
Yeah, nice. You have learned the phrases like to welcome the Muslims. Next question is, what can political leaders do to improve engagement with migrant communities in democratic processes?
Well, the number one thing would be, getting back to what I just said before, if you learn how to engage and learn how to break down barriers. So for me, I mean, there's, look, I'm an Anglican. I go to the Anglican church in Melton, but I also attend, I've been to some of the prayer centres. I've been to the temples, Hindu temples, the Sikh temples.
The mosque also.
The mosque, of course. So it's just a matter of engaging. If you want to engage people in the political process, the first thing you need to do is learn how to speak to people. You need to learn how to, understand from their cultural perspective the do's and the don'ts. And there's some really basic do's and don'ts with some communities. And then there are some things you might have to actually do a bit of research before you start trying to engage with people. But once again, it's understanding. How can you engage people in the political process? Well, you can't engage people in the political process if, one, they don't know what the process is, and two, if they don't understand when you're trying to explain that political process. So we have here in Australia a democratic process that each individual, if they're on the roll, gets to vote, gets to participate. Well, lots of people need to understand what are the policies of particular parties or particular individuals that are running, what are their values. If you don't start with education, if you don't start with understanding, then you're not going to get very far in the process. So for me, once again, I come back to something as simple as greetings and learning how to greet somebody. If you're meeting a Chinese person, Ni Hao's pretty easy to remember, something as simple as that. If it's particular cultural events, during Chinese New Year, Gong Hei Fat Choi, or things like that. If you're Cantonese, I think it's as simple as that, just to learn some of those basic cultural norms for other people.
Yeah, I have seen in Melton that some Australian people, they greet Muslims saying Assalamu alaikum also.
Yes.
All right, my next question. What advice would you offer current MPs when it comes to shaping future migration and multicultural policies?
The number one thing I'd say when it comes to shaping future multicultural policies is you can't do it by yourself. So I don't know everything about the Chinese community. I don't know everything about the Afghani community or the Indian community. I don't. I have my personal experiences. I have my background. I have my family background, things that I know and understand. But unless you're able to engage people and involve people, I think about things like parent visas.
Yep.
I personally, from a philosophical perspective, I think that engaging, I'm a member of the Liberal Party, I believe in the family unit, and if we can help people keep their family unit together, bring parents from overseas, these things are great on a philosophical level. And so then to say, how do we make sure that works for the family, for the individual, for society, and can we improve that? And if we can improve that, if we can bring people from overseas and re-engage family units, that's great. But I only know that from the conversations I've had with people from the South Asian community or people from the Chinese community, the importance of family, the importance of parents. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be able to allow in society every person who wants their parents to come over. But it does mean we need to be thinking about what are the things that will help migrants here in Australia. And I don't know all the answers to that. What I would say to politicians or future politicians is you don't need to know everything. You just need to be able to have a conversation with the people, doesn't matter whether they're migrants or where they are in community, engage, ask questions, get feedback. That's the best thing you could do.
Yeah, there's an excellent approach.
Yeah.
Like Australians, in Australia, most of the migrants, sometimes they feel isolated. So if the parents can come and join the family, that would be great. Your support for that is, I think, most welcome. My next question is, as you live in Melton, also I live in Melton too. Melton is one of Victoria's most multicultural suburbs. What do you see as the opportunities and challenges facing such diverse communities?
Well, number one, the challenges, you start with the challenges. Okay, so you've got different people from different areas and making sure that we understand that what happens here in Melton isn't reflective of what's happening elsewhere in the world. And I see a lot of people bringing their baggage from other places here. And I think that if we accept the fact that people in Melton treat each other with respect and try to live, then we'll be a much better place. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we forget about what happens overseas or other places, but it does mean that we focus on loving our neighbours as ourselves, regardless of whether our neighbours have hijab or whether they have a burqa, whether they don't celebrate or engage in any religious activities. So the challenge there is actually understanding each other, working with each other. That's a real challenge when you've got a melting pot. As I said before, we have a lot of Maltese who are older. We have a lot of younger people coming through. We also have a lot of people coming from South Asia, particularly, and from the Middle East coming into Melton. If we can work through those challenges, the great thing is the opportunities we have, because economic opportunities is one of those things. If we have people who understand culture, understand other countries, can speak the language, and when I say speak the language, I particularly mean the language, but also the cultural language. How do you make sure that we have economic engagement overseas to benefit us? And so, things like when I travel to India, having friends to be able to point out certain things to me, having friends send me in the right direction, assist me to understand what the do's and don'ts when traveling or trying to engage with people from India was a great help when I was there. I also...
Oh, you visited India?
I went to Chennai.
That's good.
I think it was last year. I went to Chennai. Yeah, it was fantastic. But once again, I had the assumption when I went to Chennai that everybody would just speak English.
Oh.
And it was not the case. And so I have this perception in my mind, and that's not necessarily the truth of the matter. So for me, when I went to Chennai, I jumped on a bus, and I think there were two people on the bus that could speak English to help me to be able to pay my fare on the bus.
Okay.
But I've really enjoyed that experience being there. But also like I say here, the opportunities for us to engage on an economic perspective with trade increases when we have people here in Melbourne or here in Victoria, people in Australia who understand how to make those connections. So great opportunities for trade, great opportunities for understanding. It's cliche, but I'll say this. Different foods. I love Indian food. So to be able to try different food and try different tastes of different foods around the world, I love Greek food. Unfortunately, I'm a vegetarian, so I miss out on some things. But you don't get that if you are isolated and you don't have the engagement. So one of the real opportunities is.
Yeah, thank you very much, Graham. It looks like you are truly multicultural and truly welcoming for the migrants. Anyway, thank you very much for coming to our studio.